Hey everyone. So, last concept that we're going to hit before spring break is one that you've already seen before. As you've noticed over the last few weeks in class, I've been doing question of the days to sort of set the stage for the future here. Today we're learning about volume. Volume is looking at a three-dimensional object and looking at how much space is in the inside of these boxes. Okay, and we've done a few volume questions already, so this should already look familiar. But today will be the first time I've ever actually assessed you to see how well you actually know volume, okay, with an actual assignment. So, here's a reminder in case you forget, and this is something you should write down, make sure you have it with you when you do your assignment today. Volume equals length times width times height. So there's three dimensions you've got to multiply. Now, if you look at this book, this is a three-dimensional object, right? It isn't just flat. It has some depth to it, okay? A lot of times we focus this year on perimeter. That's the outside, how far around this shape it is. That's a two-dimensional thing. We're only looking at this cover. Area is also two-dimensional. We're only looking at this cover, and we'd go length times width. Volume now is not just looking at the cover, but the entire book. So it's length in width, but also how deep it is. We call that height. So we have the cover sides, length and width, but also how thick the book is. So it's multiplying all three of those things together now. That's what gives us our volume. So if you look right here, this is a three-dimensional shape. We have our length and our width, and we have how thick it is as well. That's 3 feet. So we will be using this to calculate volume. And again, the math is pretty simple. You just take these three numbers, length, width, height, and you multiply them out. 6 times 5 times 3. So I take these three numbers, I plug them in, and let's do our math. 6 times 5 is 30. And 30 times 3, 90. That's it. This label would be feet, and we would say cubed, cubic feet, because you're multiplying three things, so it's to the third power. Cubic feet, or feet cubed, would be our answer. Now, in addition to doing whole numbers like this, and yes, you can use a calculator, we are also going to do some fractions. It's still the same concept. You just got to do a little bit of old school math on paper to make this a little bit easier for you. It's still length times width times height. The difference is I gave these to you in terms of fractions. So here's my length and width, and there's my height. 3/4 times 3/4 times 1/2. When you multiply fractions, you just multiply across the top, you multiply across the bottom. So let's do that. 3 times 3 is 9, times 1 is just 9. 4 times 4 is 16, times 2 is 32. You always got to check, can I simplify this? You can't. They don't have a common factor, so there's nothing to divide by. So there's our answer. We are done. Inches cubed, 9 over 32 inches cubed. Okay? So just like over here, it's still length times width times height. The difference is we actually had to do this with fractions. So multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom. We have our answer. Now remember, if we were doing decimals, it's still the same way. Length, width, height, multiplied together. And you can use a calculator. So that should be no problem. If we're doing mixed numbers, you have to turn them into improper fractions first. Once you turn them into improper fractions, you just multiply across just like I showed you. Okay? So we can do this. It's just multiplying length, width, and height. That's all volume is. It should be a nice way to enter into spring break. I hope you have a wonderful spring break, and we will be in touch afterwards, hopefully in person at some point. If not, we will be doing more of this. Adios.